Today, I'm speaking with Frank Dorsey, who has spent 32 years incarcerated in Canada prison. In this powerful conversation, he reflects on choices that led him to prison and discuss his legal challenges against Correctional Service Canada, raising concern about the barriers black offenders faces when trying to transition from medium to minimum security institutions. This interview is about consequences, accountability, and justice. Good day, and welcome to Keep Six Empowerment to Unlock the Justice System. Today, we have another wonderful episode for you where we will be interviewing Frank Dorsey from Collins Bay Minimum Security Institution. And we will be having a very open discussion with Mr. Dorsey regarding his incarceration. He has been incarcerated for about 32 years straight. And we're going to have that discussion today about the community reintegration, but also what's been going on with offenders coming inside the institution and his lived experience. We're so happy today to have another one of our members here, Adrienne Kerr-Brown, and also one of our students, Fonza, to assist us today with this interview with Mr. Dorsey. Ladies, welcome. And Frank, welcome.
Welcome.
Thank you.
My pleasure.
I'll give this opportunity to you, Ms. Brown, to open up the conversation with Mr. Dorsey.
Yes. May I call you Frank?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. How are you doing today, Frank?
Great. You?
Good. I'm good. Thanks again for giving us the opportunity just to sit and chat with you. We're hoping that what you have to say to us and to those who will hear what you have to say today, that our lives will not just be challenged, but will be changed. We're looking for impact. So we want to hear about your story so that those who, especially young individuals who have been impacted by the criminal justice system, whether their perception of it or having come in contact with it, that they can learn something that will impact how they move forward, how the trajectory of their lives, develop and turn out in the long run. So, Frank, if you don't mind, would you just tell us how your life came to be where it is at this point in time? What's a story? As you were growing up, what was life like?
Okay. Well, I can go back to about, I'm 65 years old now, okay? So I can go back to about 8 to 9 years old. So at 10 years old, I was living with my two sisters and my mother. My father was a hustler, and he was a gangster, and he was away from the family. He was never with us. I started to get a little tiny trouble, not big trouble, you know what I mean? But my father felt that I was growing up around women, so he really didn't want me there growing up around women. So one day I got in trouble at school for doing something stupid. I think it was, he came over to the place, he used to come over once a month to be able to punish us or, to just come in the picture. And it seemed like it was always on welfare day, right? So at that time, he took me away from my sisters, and he moved me with his brother, who was a pimp. And his brother's girls were working girls too. And I was forced to live over there for approximately 2 years, where I was beaten all the time. I was sexually assaulted by the girls, and I was also sexually assaulted by teachers. And that's what led me to my start of my learning to be able to go to criminal activities and stuff like that. So it was like something like, like I didn't know what I was doing at 10 years old, but I was being told, this is what you're going to do. This is what you're going to do for the rest of your life. And I had two choices as a 10-year-old child. One was to be the prey, or the other one was to be the predator. I chose to be the predator.
And what did that look like? So you were between 9 and 11. You were with your father, and this abuse took place. What happened after 11?
After 11 years old?
Yeah.
Yeah. So what happened then was that my mind was confused at that time because I didn't know what to do. So basically, I was lived with my uncle. Okay, not my father. My father was still never in the picture at that time, right? So my mother married somebody and another person than my father, and he got really upset about it. And that relationship lasted till about, somewhere in 11 and a half years old at that time, right? And then that it was over. My father came back in the picture. But I was told by adults that were like, there was always pimps around and there was always hustlers around. It was called the game. So when you're looking at the game, everybody's in that lifestyle. All family members, all cousins. My cousins were all prostitutes. My uncles were all pimps. My aunts were prostitutes. My sisters, praise God, who have passed now because of this lifestyle, were prostitutes too.
Mm. And so so your parents knew about this? They knew what was happening?
My mother didn't know what was really happening at the beginning because I was forced and taken away from her. So basically, my father knew what was going on because I remember one time when I was being molested by teachers and the things that were going on with prostitutes. So, because it was confusing for a child because you're having sex with someone that's older than you, probably about 18 years old to 10 years old. And they're a woman, you're a man, you're a boy, so you're going to be attracted to them. So it felt like, like it was a good thing that was happening at that time with the ladies in that, right? So I went to my father one day and I told him, like, Dad, this is what's going on. Like, my teachers are doing this to me and these girls are doing this to me, right? Is it right? And he looked at me and I remember the words that he used at that time. He said, "Man up, Negro." Explicitive, and just deal with it. So that's when I knew that I had to change my personality from being a nice child to becoming an evil child.
Right. So nobody told you that you could report this, that this was wrong, that this is something that should not have been happening to you as a child?
Well, you got to remember too is that one part is that let me just back up a bit now is that at 6 years old my two sisters were raped and they caught syphilis, okay, and I remember the police coming into this picture when they were 6 years old. So we're talking about in the 60s, okay. So back then it was very, very difficult. Like it was very, very difficult. I remember them telling my sisters and my mother that they could not charge the guy because their children were too young at the time. Okay, so there was never nothing, there was always abuse going on in every family. So there was never nothing that we could run to, like police. I don't know who the police are, The only people that I knew were these type of people. I was told these are your people. You, not you in particular, miss, but youth people were the bad people. You were the counselors, you were the educators, you were the bad. Not to talk to you about this type of lifestyle.
Go ahead, Richard, over to you.
Thank you. So Frank, growing up and in that kind of a lifestyle, was there any form of support as a young individual, like within the family itself? Like I understand that your uncle but it was I understand everyone in that circle was might have been a player or a hustler and so forth. But was there anyone, that structural wise that looked at things that could have guided or supported these issues with, around in your surrounding?
Mm-hmm. Simple answer is no. But to also to let you know too is that this, when we're dealing with young children around my age that were happening back then, especially when you're dealing with boys, is that it's tough for boys to be able to say that these type of things are happening to them. It's tough for a man to say these things are happening to them because this is how we were built. So when these type of things that are happening to young children, they hold it in and hold it in and hold it in. I have only recently, in the last 10 years, dealt with trauma that happened as a youth. Coming up to the court system, there was nothing about, they didn't want to talk about that. Okay, you were sexually assaulted, so what? We just write it down. So there was no one actually that I could go to at that time. And I never, it's a good question what you asked, because I never had I never knew anybody that could help me. You know what I mean?
Right. Okay. And even going forward, so regarding your index offense itself, or even being in the game, what age were you where you were solidified in the game, or growing in that hustle? I mean, you've got family and member around you, so they start schooling you and stuff like that, I'm sure. But when did you start picking up your offenses within that whole circle of the game and hustling?
Yes. Well, so it would have happened, like, like around, like, so I would have been probably about 14 years old, okay? And so I met a girl that was 2 years older than me. So this was back on Young Street back then in them days. This was back in the 70s, 74, 75, somewhere around that way. And she actually was working in one of the massage parlors that were upstairs on Young Street. And she liked me and she took me in. And she offered me at that time to give me half of the money that she was making at that time. So I was thrilled that this was happening at that time. And at this time, my uncle found out that I was doing this stuff, and was proud of me. But he said to me, like, basically, how much money did you get from her? I said, half. And I remember him giving me a backhander at 14 years old and told me, that's not what I taught you. I taught you to dominate, control, and take everything from her. So this would have been the start of my crime cycle at about 14 years old.
Okay.
And then when I turned into so there was never no juvenile record at that time. I had no juvenile record, okay? So there would have been, back then it was 16 years old. You became an adult at 16 years old back in the 70s, okay? So that's when I got charges of assault, just being on Young Street, hanging out on Young Street with all the hustlers and all the players and so on and so forth. And then it grew later on to the criminality part of actually starting to live off of other women.
Right. And with that in mind, do you navigate into the system even at such a young age? Was there within a system, was there psychotherapists, psychology, were you seeing regarding these struggles that you were experiencing? What I'm trying to look at, was there ever any form of support or counseling to address these things? Because this is at an age where at 10 or 11, where your mind is still not fully developed, and you're experiencing these things, which you're already being groomed, I would say, into becoming the person that you ended up, in these situations later on in life.
Yeah, it's a good question, Rich. But I think that what people got to understand is that some children grow up with good parents, and the parents actually, are moral. You know what I mean? And some people grow up the way I grew up, and therapists. I never even heard about a therapist. You know what I mean? Like, I remember, like my sisters, my sisters before they passed told me, we want you to send a message out about what this world done to us. So basically, one of the incidents I can tell you is that at 10 years old, I would have been 14, at 10 years old, my youngest sister was given cocaine by my father to be able to sell it. Well, she dabbled. So otherwise she used a bit of it, and then she became an addict at 10 years old to cocaine. So at that time, there was nothing there to help her with that way. There was nothing there to help me. I didn't even know what a psychotherapist was I didn't know what a psychologist was. And personally, is that we didn't have time in that lifestyle because it was a flip of the time. So basically, your daytime would be morning till noon and you go home. And then our daytime would be nighttime, the morning when we go home. And it would be breakfast, it'd be supper time at breakfast time, and it would be lunch it would be lunch, and then while you're sleeping, and then you would go on to supper when you wake up. So it was a complete circle that changed. So there was never no help, especially, and honestly, when you get addicted to that lifestyle, you don't care. You don't want help. And that's what a lot of people don't understand right now that's going on, as you'll get into, that you don't want help. Because this is all you know.
So with what's going on even in the community now, I see, like, I have the opportunity to work with a different set of people within the organization and get a lot of calls, that we get. What I can say is that I have noticed a very big increase when it comes to human trafficking charge. And on top of the human trafficking charge, there's also been an increase in what they call a dangerous offender application, which the Crown attorneys are submitting on these individuals. I can say that I find them in the age of 23 to 27 years old, 29, maybe their 30s. With that said, and what you think, what do you feel are some of the key factors to date?
Yeah, I mean, so just to echo quickly here, is that I was given a dangerous offender sentence. And for people that don't understand what a dangerous offender sentence means, is that I was given a sentence that was called an indeterminate sentence. So you're eligible for 7 years after your arrest to go out for parole, and you just don't get it, okay? So I think that, when it comes to answering your question, could you just repeat that a little bit more, Rich, what you were saying? So I can get into specifically what you said.
So my question was, what's your point of view? As I've noticed an increase when it comes to young individuals and these index offense, but also the application that's going in on these individuals. I don't have any actual data right now that I can bring up, but I know that it has increased. In caseload wise and individual reaching out.
Okay. Well, see, let me just go back first a bit. So what the original offense was called the habitual sentence. It was called an habitual sentence, which would basically be the same as a dangerous. This would have been back in the 60s. Then it moved on to a dangerous sexual offender. Then it moved to a dangerous offender. What people were trying to say then is that this sentence is not constitutional. What the Supreme Court of Canada said basically was it becomes constitutional because we only net a few people. So they put a net out there and only a few people are caught up in the net. So what happened then is that they basically changed the regimen of the whole dangerous offender sentence, and they started putting more people in there, more different categories on there. So in other words, it started out as a sexual offense to get you to that type of category, but then it moved on to getting guys that were, like, for instance, with me, I got caught on the 3 strikes you're out. A lot of people don't believe that there's a 3 strikes you're out. So I got caught on the 3 strikes you're out, which is called the designated offense. So that means you were in the system twice before, in a federal system, for a Schedule 1 offense. And then your third offense automatically makes you into that cycle. What the Crown Attorneys and what the Attorney General has been doing with the Crown Attorneys is that they're abusing the system. They were trying to pick and choose by abusing who they put in the system on their first strike. So in other words, when it comes to youth or black youth, or let's use ethnic cultural, because there's so many different kinds of people now. But what they're doing now is that they're giving them a lot of guys dangerous offender sentences and saying, you prove when you're ready to get out. But what they don't realize is that an indefinite or indeterminate sentence is tough it's very, very tough. It's the toughest sentence in Canada. And these youth have no choice. So no chance. And then what happens now is that when society puts them all together now and calls them Medium, Workworth, Joyceville, all the penitentiaries, or across Canada with other different type of people, is that they become adaptable to the system. In other words, like I was told, you're never going to get out. You're never ever going to get out. Okay, so if I'm never going to get out, why should I be good? Why should I be good? Why shouldn't I be out there hustling, doing my thing, making thousands of dollars inside the prison, making sure my family, if I do have a family, because a lot of people don't have families. I never had a family. So when we're looking at the whole totality of the dangerous offender regimen, is that I still believe it's unconstitutional, because there's ways around that type of thing. They have different type of categories that go into that, which would be the long-term offender, okay? But even that is, as Mr. Miller knows, it'll fail you, because you get a sentence of 2 years, 3 years, then you get a 10-year long-term offender. It might take you 20 to 30 years to finish the 10-year sentence. So it comes down to is that people got to be able to understand the warehousing that is going on at CSC.
Right. Thank you. And I think for people who don't understand, when we speak about this dangerous offender regime, it is something like Frank outlined that was initiated originally for individuals within our system that was sex predators. Sorry. Sex predators. I can only go back to where I can recall 2 cases I can go off of, which would have been one with, I think the name was Whitmore. He was a very known sex offender in Ontario. And the next one would have been Carl Bernardo. So prior, there wasn't very many, and then now it's opening up as a big door to just drop everyone in that basket. An individual, I'm aware, and as you brought up earlier, that an individual can do an offense of break and enter. So usually I've seen guys in our caseload where they have had 2 offenses of break and enter in a residential, because there's a difference between breaking into a residential facility or a commercial, and a residential more detrimental, and where they will be designated as underneath the regime, and indefinite sentence, right? But thank you very much for clarifying. I just wanted to kind of let the audience understand clearly what it is. Fonza, go ahead.
So I just kind of wanted to ask you a question. You talked a little bit about how in the last 10 years, you were kind of able to process the abuse that happened to you as a youth. And so I just wanted to understand this a little bit more. Was it more of an individual process that you went through, or while you were in prison, were there programs or rehabilitation initiatives that helped you come to terms with what happened with you as a youth?
Yeah, it's a very good question you're asking. It's like, okay, so basically, what happened with me is that, so I did my first sentence, I think in 1984, okay? And then I got out and I reoffended, okay, while I was living in a halfway house, okay? Now, I remember if you would have asked me in 1984 what type of person I was going to be, I would have said to you, I'm going back out there and I'm going to become a pimp again, because I wasn't afraid of a federal sentence, okay? And that's exactly what I did. I went back out there and I went to another halfway house and I did the same thing again, okay? So basically, what happened then is that in prison at that time, when it came to programs, is that CSC was basically trying to say that, we're in to be able to rehabilitate and to reintegrate, okay? That's their famous words, okay? And with anybody, everybody does programs inside for one reason, okay? To get out. That's the bottom line. They tell you do a program and you're going to get out. So when it came to me now, I did every single program up to 1990, because I came back and did another sentence, up to 1990. And I think it started to hit me then, basically, the things that I was doing wrong. So in other words, not only was I a trafficker, I was an abuser. So I had to be able to, and I was married at that time. I married a woman while I was in the Don jail, and when I got to Joyceville in the 90s, is that she used to be a working girl. So when she left me for a year because I wasn't changing my behavior, I still had the controlling, manipulative thoughts that I had, and the programs weren't really doing anything because there was no substance inside the program to be able to make change. They didn't put enough energy into the program, and I don't think enough money into the program. So basically now moving on now, what happened now is that when I came back as a dangerous offender now, I was just, when they gave me the dangerous offender sentence, it was the worst feeling in the world, okay? You think your life is over, okay? And spiritually, it happened through me one day that, 'cause I did a lot of years of segregation. And what happened now is that spiritually, I had something come through to me and say to me that basically I was going to, while I was in segregation, I was going to become a person that can be able to speak on human trafficking and speak on domestic violence and so on and so forth. But I didn't have the tools from programming to be able to do that type of stuff. So when I got sentenced now, I started trying to do things to be able to help myself. One of the things that I learned, it was easier to help people than to help myself. So basically, even though I was trying to be able to rehabilitate, I still wasn't helping myself. So leading on now, I did all the programs again. And what happened now is that the CSC picked the pace up on the program. They called it an ICPM program, okay? And a lot of things started happening to me. What made me really change was I had to walk in my victim's shoes and to understand the harm that I caused them, to their families, and what they're going through now in life. And then when I started doing the program, I had a different outlook about certain different situations in that. Moving on now to answer your question now, is that they had, when it came to teachers now, for instance, I never wanted to be around a teacher. I never wanted to sit in a class because it always reminded me of what teachers did to me back then. So every time I went there, I felt physically they can't do nothing to me, but that thought as a child never got answered in my brain of the harm that I suffered as a child. So when I started moving on, I said, okay, listen, you know what? It's time for me to start showing other men, other boys, that these things that are happening to us, we can talk about them. We don't got to feel ashamed that these things are going on. That happened in our life before, excuse me. And when I started doing that, then things of change started to happen slowly. Because with every change, there's an exchange of past behavior. But when it comes to being able to say I'm going to change in one night, it's not going to happen. Especially for so many decades and decades and decades of abuse that you caused to other people, are you going to make that change? So at 65 years old, I always got to still make change, because even I've been by myself for 26 years without a woman in my life, but I've always had to make change and understand a woman's point of view. I always have to understand that women are my equal, and a lot of women are way smarter than me, and accept that. So that's how change basically happened. I hope I answered your question.
Yes, you did. Thank you so much.
I wanted for you to kind of zoom in on your experience within the justice system. Having spent decades in the justice system, how have you seen policies and structural change?
Yeah. Well, it's, like I said, during my stay, I'm one of the people that you call an advocate. So in other words, my jobs were always in institutions, either around sports, or mostly it was about me writing things. And when it came to Black inmates, and how they treated us inside of the institutions. And then we started gaining more people from India and so on and so forth. And basically, the policies around that were horrible, because the best thing was, sorry, the worst thing was, is that they had indigenous programming for indigenous offenders, okay? And then they had nothing for black offenders or ethnic cultural offenders, okay? And as you know, in order to be able to do programming, it basically is, let me just clarify that a bit now. So when they do programming now, for instance, they make a program up and they say, this is how you're going to do this type of thing. So basically, the program is geared to meet the needs of Bobby and Becky rather than Tyrone and LaShondra. Okay, and they don't understand that, you know what I mean, that their programs have zero effect on these youth. Yes, these youth can play the game. You can sit there for 6 weeks, 8 weeks, 10 weeks, and do the program and get a great mark, and you're going home. But are they really having an effect on you? So when it comes to the hiring of black social workers or black psychologists or psychiatrists or anybody in that type of field, I challenged CSC on all these different types of policies before, and they have basically said, well, what we do now, I challenge on their hiring of people. So what they said that we're basically doing is that we're, when we hire, we throw it out there on our site, and basically black people aren't responding to the challenges to come up to work here because of the area. They don't want to be away from Toronto or Ottawa or wherever it may be. So it's always a cop-out to say that what they're doing, because the only type of, you know, I mean, like, I've been in this for a long time, like I said. So I've seen one black deputy warden, okay, here at this institution. That would have been in 1996, okay? And, you know, to a lot of ethnic cultural guards and stuff like that, or people that work in there, it's racism geared towards them too. This is a system that it's the old boys club. And what I mean by that is that they have people in there that are mothers and fathers have worked in the system. So policies and CDs are made by their family. So when it comes to being able to help black offenders or ethnic cultural offenders, okay, it's tough. And then they bring in what we call a token to say, okay, yeah, he's now an AWI or AWO or whatever it may be, but policy can never change. So when we're looking at being able to help our youth, not youth, so when we're looking at being able to help young men, young guys that are coming in the system, is that it's not going to help them because CSC is basically warehousing them and not giving them the opportunities to be able to adapt to be going back out to the community. How can you give somebody the opportunity to go back in the community when they're not rehabilitated? So, you know, that's where I'm at with that.
All right, thank you. And just one more something I want to find out from you was, can you describe your experience transitioning from, you know, a max or a medium facility all the way down to a minimum to where you are now? How did that transition look for you?
Well, when you go in, like you said, so you're doing life or dangerous offender sentence, you have to do 2 years minimum inside of a maximum security institution. Then you come down to a medium if your behavior has been good. A lot of times, you're just living in these institutions that of being maximum offender. Excuse me, is that it's very, very tough. It's very, very tough because you have to follow the rules and you have to be able to not be able to go against your fellow inmates, because the outline is this, is that your fellow inmates outweigh them, because there's two sides, team green and team blue. So basically, if you go down from their maximum, if you get a chance to go down there, you go to medium. And with medium, when it comes to lifers now, for instance now, this is a big statement I'm going to make right now, is that it's better to do a sentence of killing a person than to do a dangerous offender sentence. And the reason why is because with doing a life sentence, okay, is that the numbers are saying that lifers do not reoffend as much, where a dangerous offender is considered reoffending. So they made these words now intractable for dangerous offenders, where a lifer was, okay, I killed my wife. It's a domestic. No, it's murder and it's violence, okay? So when you look at a dangerous offender now, is that he has a record. That's how he became a dangerous offender. Most of them, not all of them. That's how he became a dangerous offender. So they build it up now. So they'll build it up for me when you're 16 years old. So you're 16 years old and you move ahead to being able to be, through your time. So you might plead guilty here, plead guilty there, plead guilty here, plead guilty there, and you receive third degree. But these are all adding up on you, okay? And then when you get to the final type of thing is that, you know what I mean, like, it's very, very tough to be able to go from a medium. If you're a lifer, it's easier to go from a minimum to a medium to a minimum. But with most dangerous offenders, they might not see the time of day. They might not see a minimum institution. And, you know, I know, and this is, you know, I'm not going to get into it now, but this is one of the things that I fought for. And I had a victory over it. But so it was basically, you know, once you get to minimum now the battle starts again, because POs are afraid to put your name down to go to a minimum. And then they say, okay, well, I'm going to put you into now you're in a minimum. We got to come up with a plan now to get you out of that minimum security, to be able to find out if you can be rehabilitated and put out in the community. So you go through the minimum security here, where you go through these escorted passes at first. So like you do 2 or 3 years. I did 3 years about escorted passes, and then I did 3 UTAs, which would be unescorted passes, and now I received a day parole as a dangerous offender.
Great, thank you. Ms. Brown?
Yes, thank you. I'm learning so much from you, Frank. Talk to us about these passes. You have been given the opportunity. Clearly, you have fought very hard for these opportunities to be able to reintegrate in as much as the system has allowed. And so you've had unescorted and escorted passes. Can you talk to us about the challenges, the difficulties of that process, reintegrating? You came out for the first time and saw society and how it had changed and so on. How did that impact you, and how did that change your perspective on what society had become and how you needed to adjust to become a part of society again?
Well, with me, it wasn't, you know, I mean, some people feel like they're, you know, get out there and they're scared, they're looking around and stuff. That never happened with me. What happened with me is that I got out, and I remember the very first feeling I felt. I went to jail yesterday. I went to jail yesterday, right? It's the same thing, man. You know what I mean? The thing that confused me was everybody was on these phones doing things. And I'm not saying I was the best inmate around, but I never learned how to use a phone while I was in prison, because I never had a contraband phone. I might have did some other things out there, but I never had a contraband phone. So you know what I mean, it was very, very tough. It was, you know what I mean, like one thing was I was trying to learn the bus system in Brampton, and I got this phone here, and you know me, I'm just, okay, let's try this button, see if this works. No, that didn't work. Let's try this button, okay? Richard picks up the phone. I don't know what happens, right? You know what I mean? And then I'm on the bus, and the phone starts ringing. I'm swiping this phone, boom, just trying to answer this phone, and that phone won't answer, and just keep ringing, and the whole bus is full, and everybody's looking at me. And I said, oh my God, everybody's trying to get the phone off, right? Okay. So I'm trying to push the button to make the phone go off, but it won't go off, okay? So stuff like that. I think the other things were like, you know, maybe like for instance now, like getting into, so I got into the dollar store, and they have these little things where you can put the money in the slot. I'm trying to shove the money in the slot, and these people are standing there looking at me like, are you kidding me? You see how long this line up is? right? Trying to shove this thing in there, it ain't working, right? So now I'm just gonna say, I said, you know what? I'm never gonna shove money in the slot again. I'm gonna stand in the line and wait to go to that cashier, okay? No matter how many people are there, right? So I think it was such a relieving feeling to be finally, after all these years, go up there and say, listen, man, I want to be able to go to a restaurant. I want to be able to do what I can do, go up, with Richard and stuff like that, right? And to be aware that, you have to be able to follow these conditions, right? Because there's so many different conditions that you'll have, right? You know what I mean? Now, if you're going out there to beat the system, you're not going to be able to follow your conditions. If you're going out there to be normal and act civil, then you're going to follow your conditions. So I think that when it came down to, just the communication thing and there's going to be a lot more challenges, when I get out there next time, right? You know what I mean? But, one thing I would say at the end though, is that even though I was more comfortable in jail, because I'm more comfortable in jail than I am in the community after all the years that I spent inside, right? That I would rather live in a rooming house, a one-room rooming house, than live in prison. So yes, I plan on hopefully, me getting out there and doing the right things that I'm supposed to do and following all the rules that I'm supposed to follow. And, and I got to be able to ask for help. That's the most important thing, is that you got to be able to ask for help. You know what I mean? That's important. I did my previous releases. It was, why am I going to ask you for help? I don't want to tell you that it makes you feel vulnerable sometimes. And for people to ask for help, a lot of people don't want to ask for help. So I think that we have to learn to ask for help and not be ashamed that we don't know these type of things.
Thank you, indeed. You prepared yourself for this time in your life in a number of different ways. You talked about the programs that were available, those that were unavailable, those that you were instrumental in bringing to the fore, that were able to programs that were able to focus on and help individuals from minority groups. Were you able to access education outside of that, like college courses, etc.?
Miss, I'm not gonna lie to you, right? I always tell the truth, and I've had they've given me the opportunity in prison to be able to educate myself, and basically, I really haven't educated myself, and it's I don't know, it might be a learning. I know that I had a learning disability my whole life, and they say that I had a learning disability, but it was tough for me to be able to. Because a lot of things with me is that, with having a disability like that, is that, for instance, now, I know how to use a computer, but I use one finger to use my keyboard. I'm like, ding, 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 ding. Okay, you know what I mean? And then, I'm still learning how to use something new every day. So when it came to be able to learn about math, for instance, which was the toughest subject I had to learn about, and I always thought, man, counting money and that's good enough. Fractions and division, what's that, man? I don't know what that is. They show me how to do it, and I got it. Now I got to go to the bathroom. When I come back to the bathroom, I just forgot how to do it now. Okay, so they gave me the opportunity for this type of thing. I think though that so that being said, and isn't it an excuse? Is that I've self-educated myself in a lot of different ways to be able to compete with people that are really, really educated. So with a lot of people that, I don't know if this happened because I'm not going to just blame that thing that happened with the kid, but when I was a kid, but education was a tough thing for me growing up.
Yeah, and that's understood, especially in light of what you described. If you were to talk to individuals who were thinking the way many young people might be thinking about crime, it's you talked about the first time you got out in '84, and the fact that when you came out, you were like, I'm ready to hit it again, right? Because I'm not afraid. If you were to Frank today were to talk to Frank 1984, or anybody who would be thinking the same way or find themselves in that situation, what would you say to them?
Yeah, it's you know, it's a tough situation. It's a tough thing to talk to kids. I'm going to answer your question in a second, right? So for instance now, when Richard and them come up there, Richard knows because Richard would come up there, you know, before he had his organization, we'd be inside, and the organizations come up there, and different organizations, and they do their little thing, and what happens now is that everybody's happy, everybody's getting along, everybody's doing their thing, and then, you know, I want to change, and we're talking about change the whole 3-4 hours, but once we get back to the range, it's all like radon chong. You know what I mean? So it's happening again. So if looking at it now, to answer your questions now, is that living in today's world is a lot tougher than the world that I lived in back in the day, because these kids are ruthless. They will kill you at the hottest second, okay? You know what I mean? Don't even look at them wrong, okay? You know what I mean? Call them sir. You know what I mean? So I think that in order to be able to, one of the things that I had now, for instance now, is that I did inside the institutions, is I used to run all the sports and work with, okay? And you would have, these kids are so geeked up, but then we have competitions, like basketball competitions, okay? And I would be the referee, okay? And they would respect me, but they would hate each other because it was set versus set, okay? And a lot of times people brought out their knives and so on and so forth, and a lot of times people got hurt, okay? I think when it came down to be able to look at behavior, is that, you know, this game is so exciting to these young men and young children growing up that it's tough to get away from, okay? And no matter what we do, we'll never be able to stop all the violence because it's so glorifying of the stuff that goes on in this world. You got sex, money, control, drugs, okay? And the only, you know, when they look at me, they you know, a lot of people say, hey, yo, pimp, what's going on, man? You know what I mean? I don't want to become a pimp now. I'm 65 years old. But it gets through to them. I had some people come up to me and say, listen, Frank, I think Supreme Court of Canada changed the rules of the game. They now say that pimping is legal. Then no, it ain't. No, it ain't, brother. It ain't legal to pimp somebody. They just hit you on the human trafficking. That's all they do. They take away the procurement and they live in life, okay? So I think being able to, you know, tell them that, you know, that no matter what you do, it's never going to work that type of way. It might work for a minute. Your game might work for a minute doing your thing, but you're going to go to jail eventually. And they say, I can do the time, man. Yeah. Do the time by yourself. You know what I mean? You got a woman right now, you're going to be by yourself. You know what I mean? I was with a woman for 26 years. I don't date men. I don't have nothing to do with men. You know, so like, you know, teaching these kids, teaching these young men that this game claims lives. And the whole game is open to everything, drug, prostitution, everything, okay? But it will claim your life, no matter how much money you're making. That's why you got to respect people like Mr. Miller here, that has organizations that can give them a job that will pay them the proper way, where they'll respect their money. Because the money that they're making, they never respect. So being able to educate them on stuff like that, like what Mr. Miller does, helps putting something different in their mind, okay? So, you know what I mean? Like, yes, you can go to prison, you can do the time, but one thing about it right now, you know, everybody thinks that, you know, I go to prison and I'm doing life 10, I'm getting out in 10 years. No, you ain't. No, you ain't. You know what I mean? You know, this prison is meant to warehouse you, especially if you're an ethnic cultural offender. It's going to warehouse you, okay? You're going to become an old man like me, okay? If you live that long. So I would say to them that, you know what I mean, like, be careful where you walk. You know what I mean? Be careful where you walk, because you're not going to be able to walk there one day.
Yeah, indeed. Going back to when you were a kid, so we just spoke to your 1984 self, but there's also your 9-year-old self, your 6-year-old self. You're looking forward to a new life, hopefully very soon, on the outside. If a child should come to you at this point, having learned what you've learned, also having walked where you've walked, and that child intimates, suggests that this is happening to them, what would you say to that kid? How would you handle that
Yeah.
now, having gone through what you have?
Yeah, a very good question. That's it's gonna go down like this. Is that I think it all starts if you're looking at a child that's 9 years old. He's probably in school. Okay, so that's where he's learning his behaviors from. Okay, so I think that it's got to boil down to is that with a lot of kids that are being bullied. Okay, is that it's not good to be called a narc. It's not good to be called a rat because you're basically telling on somebody what to do. You're telling on somebody that could get yourself in trouble. I think that, but on the other hand is that you're afraid to be able to talk to teachers, counselors, or even your parents. Because you tell your parents, what did your parents go do? Give me your hand, let's go to school. Now your mom dragging you through the things you want to fight everybody, okay? You know what I mean? So I think that there's got to be more help, first of all, to be able to communicate with these young children about bullies, about what they're going to go through. So I think that, one of the things that, like most kids that say, what do you want to be when you grow up? Not too many people say not too many people in the community are going to say they want to be a police officer. Okay? So we're looking at, like, yeah, I won't be a basketball player, man. You know what I mean? I'm going to be a rapper. Okay? But showing them the facts that how many rappers make it in this world? How many people make it in basketball? How many people make it in these type of sports, right? You know what I mean? Being able to tell them that, like, listen, man, like, I understand that you're talking about, not being able to tell people, but you have to be able to trust somebody in your life that you can talk to. Somebody that you're not afraid to talk to about, and somebody that can help you. Asking for help is the most important thing in the world. If you feel you're being bullied, if you feel someone taking advantage of you, go to somebody that's going to help you and tell them what your fears are. Don't be afraid not to tell them what your fears are. Tell them what your fears are. And that might help at the beginning to be able to do that, or you could end up like me, who was afraid to ask people for help, who became addicted to that lifestyle because it felt so good. There's nothing in that life. There's nothing in that lifestyle will help you. However, there's no feeling like that lifestyle either. So you got to remember, as somebody that like yourself, that understand that this feeling is so good to these young kids. You know what I mean? So have people like you around this, and you, Mr. Miller, will help these young kids by being able to make choices and to be able to say one crucial thing: you have one life to live. You better help yourself. You better help yourself. You got one life to live. You die, you ain't coming back. You know what I mean? You don't think you think Tupac's happy in his world that he's in now? No, man, he wish he was in this world. Change has got to happen.
Thank you. Back at you, Richard.
Thank you very much. Father, go ahead. Do you have any?
I just wanted to ask one question, was just how did you maintain hope and resilience, especially during this process? Because I know it wasn't easy for you to even get day parole or to go from maximum to medium to the minimum, especially because you were denied a lot of time. So how did you maintain this hope and resilience?
Yeah, that's tough. You know what I mean? Because, like you're told the whole time, that you're useless. They declared me, how they declared me a dangerous offender? They said that I'm a psychopath, that I suffer from antisocial personality disorder, and I have poor impulsivity control. And I have, anyways, they said that to release me would be unmanageable inside a community. So the system starts from the time that, when you beat somebody down with a stick and tell them that they can't amount to anything in their life. What usually happens is you become that person. But it just happens, you know what I mean? Like, what have these men got to look forward to? You know what I mean? Some men might never have a girlfriend again. Some men, who wants to live with a man that's doing the rest of his life in prison? You know what I mean? And then you got, like, like who wants to be able to have your children come up here to visit you behind the wall? You know what I mean? And, like, so I think that, I mean, like, with me is that when it came to hope in that, it was, I was always on a mission to show CSC that they were wrong, to show the courts that, yes, I did these offenses, and yes, I should be accountable for all the offenses that I did. However, I believe that anybody can change. You know what I mean? Anybody can make a change in their life. And I started slowly making changes. And then one of the big things that happened to me is that I started, so the feeling of that lifestyle of being in that game started to slowly leave me, because I started doing different things to help people. And helping people makes you feel way more better than hurting people. Okay? And if you want to still hurt people, then you should never be released. So it was about helping people, meeting people like yourselves. That I can make that change in my life, and hoping one day that that they would like give me day parole. I mean, like, I had all the support in the world to go for day parole, but did I really think that they were going to give it to me? Because they kept on telling me before that, you're going to amount to nothing. That's the word I was looking. Intractable. You are intractable to your own behavior. You know what I mean? You'll never be able to make a change in your life, your lifestyle. And yes, there's ways of making change in that lifestyle. You know what I mean? One is incarceration. Years and years of incarceration. One is to be able to change your another part is to change your process, your thinking process, your morals. Your understanding your lack of empathy that made you do these type of crimes, and just to be able to understand how to be able to make change in your life. And even if I got turned down, right? Like I told the parole lady before, even if you turn me down, miss, I'm not going to stop doing what I'm doing. Okay? I'm still going to be me now. I'm not going back down that road again, ever again. So that's.
Thank you, Frank. I know it's been a challenge for you, and we're very much happy for the process that you're making. And I'm very much aware of reintegration is a very difficult part, especially being in for such a long time, and technology, like you expressed earlier, how of a challenge that is. And that is something that I myself personally have brought up over the years about even a program for lifers, to reintegrate with technology and smartphone and navigate in the whole technology system. So that is something that's definitely needed. We cannot at any time disagree on that. But I want to say, I know we just want to close off with a few important thing. I would like to hear from you, Frank, a very structured message that you would like to pass on to young people or young men, and we have women too who are being caught up in those areas of the human trafficking charges. What is something that you would like to let them know from your own lived experience that will not maybe steer them away from that lifestyle or get them caught up in that area?
Yeah, we'll start with the men first, because I have more insight toward the way a predator thinks, to where a trafficker thinks, and to make them understand, to try to have men understand the harm that we've inflicted upon our victims, during our crime cycle, our thought process when it came to being able to understand that, power and control was the most dominant thing inside of a pimp and a prostitute relationship. To be able to change that thinking for a man, it would be, if he isn't ready to change, it's going to be virtually impossible for him to change at that moment. However, if he understands the harm that he has done to his victim, he's got to first own up to himself and say to himself, I did this crime. They're not lying. I did this. I might not like or want to believe other people to believe that I didn't do this type of stuff, but this is what I did. And I would want them to understand, men to understand that, having empathy, which pimps never had with empathy. Maybe because we never got taught how to love properly. I don't know. But I think that understanding the whole point about when it came to empathy and to know what a woman, to know what we put them through, because we'll never understand what a woman or a teenager or a child go through when it comes to this type of living style. So I would challenge men to be able to put down that what you're doing right now and understand that this could happen to you. I'm you. I know that good feeling, but it's got to stop. It's got to stop. And if you don't stop it, we're going to hurt more children and more women and more teenagers. And when it comes to the woman part, is that, no one understands a woman better than a woman. And no one understands a female child better than a woman, right? I know that I can't personally help them because of the situation that I'm in. But what I can do is help the advocates understand the way a pimp thinks, how to get a woman away from a pimp or a teenager away from a pimp, to understand the methods that go into the psychological part of procuring, to understand what control a man is using. I had the ability, and I'm ashamed of who I was, and I'm ashamed of the things that I've done, but I had the ability to walk into any club and pick, at that time, the weakest link. So being able to understand that, and that men like me will lie to you. They will promise you the world, and it will never ever change. Nothing they will give you will ever bring your self-respect back of all the creeps that are touching you. And most of all, the last part of this message I would say to this: if you're forcing a young girl or a woman to prostitute for you, and you're having sex with her, that is sexual assault. Thank you.
Thank you, Frank. Well, anyone have any last remarks, any questions or anything? This has been a very impactful afternoon here, to say the least.
Sorry, I couldn't find my mic to unmute, but Frank, I'd like to say a big thank you for joining us today. I have learned, my eyes have been opened to a number of things, and I am moved by how much you have learned and how far you have come in your own journey. And I really do think you have so much to give. My hope is that those who you give it to will be ready to receive it. As you said something very, very important earlier on about when Richard asked you to speak to, individuals, you said it's important that people know that they need to change and they want to change. And so I'm hoping that those you come across are individuals who have come face to face with the fact that there's a particular trajectory, there's a particular lifestyle that they really don't want to become a part of, and that they will hang on to the life lessons that you're sharing with them. I wish you all the best as you take the next few months into the next season of your life, and I'm certain that we will be crossing paths again. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Welcome.
Thank you. Martha?
Yes, I just wanted to say thank you so much. It was a pleasure doing this interview with you. You're a very well-articulated man, and it was great to learn your journey throughout prison.
Thank you.
Thank you, Frank. I appreciate it, and stay tuned. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you all for joining us today for another episode of Keep Six Empowerment to Unlock the Justice System. We had the opportunity today to speak with Frank Dorsey from Collins Bay Minimum Institution in Ontario, Canada. And it was a very eye-opener regarding the human trafficking and what goes on within the justice system. Until next time, thank you. Peace out.